long ball is going to go for a touchdown. The game's over. Webster Slaughter.
Metcalf will go for the score. Unbelievable.
45-40. Run, William, run. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown. Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Sight wants it all on this one for Logan, and he is there.
Jim Brown to the 30. Jim Brown is going to go in for another touchdown.
The Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow. It is Baker Mayfield.
Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to the 73rd episode of the 1085 Gridiron Podcast. It's our Joe Thomas episode, and how fitting is that number with everything that we're going to talk about today with the Browns and the Steelers game this Sunday, their season predictions and whatnot. But I can't do any of that without my co-host, Jack McCurry of the North Coast Sports. How you doing tonight, Jack?
I'm doing well. Football has officially started. The Eagles and the Falcons just kicked off, and we are ready to preview the upcoming season for the Browns.
Yeah, we are. And, we were lucky enough to have an interview to preview the Pittsburgh Steelers. We had on Tony Serino. He's the host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. You've heard a few guys from the Locked On Network, and I really encourage you guys to check out their work. We've had Jeff Lloyd on with us from the Locked On Browns podcast before. Just a great guy. We've had Mark Schofield of Locked On Patriots, and now we've had Tony on from Locked On Steelers podcast. So they do a great job with their network over there, and they have a great thing going. And we were really thankful that Tony was able to join us. We recorded his interview on Sunday, so we were thankful that he was able to join us and preview the game with us. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into that interview, and we'll be back after that. All right, right now we are pleased to be joined by Tony Serino. Hopefully I said that right. I forgot to ask before we even started. He is the host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. How are you doing, Tony?
Very good. Thanks for having me on.
I did say that right, correct?
You did, yeah.
Okay, thank goodness. We were just talking off the air about crazy names, and here I go. I forgot to ask our how to pronounce our guest's last name.
You got that one. You got that one right.
All right, that's good. Well, we're here. Obviously, we're playing the Steelers this Sunday, and so we want to get you on here, discuss Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Obviously, it's a long storied rivalry. It hasn't been much of one since 1999, since the Browns came back. You could argue that the Browns or the Steelers and Ravens is more of the Browns and Steelers rivalry of old. Thanks to Armodell, and we won't get into that. But we renew this rivalry week one of the NFL season. The Browns have made a ton of moves this offseason. The Steelers have tweaked some things. They have a new offensive coordinator. They obviously have their big guns back with Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. Looking at your team as a whole, what can we expect from the 2018 Pittsburgh Steelers?
I think the expectation in Pittsburgh is, it's Super Bowl or bust, right? Especially given where this team is with Ben Roethlisberger and how many more years is he going to play, and with Le'Veon Bell going into very likely his last season as a Pittsburgh Steeler. I think the expectation has to be Super Bowl. It was a year ago. It will be Super Bowl again. There are still real questions about the defense in Pittsburgh. Of course, they ended 2017 on such a sour note, giving up 45 points to the Jacksonville Jaguars led by Blake Bortles, and that game was in Pittsburgh. And there were real questions all offseason about how is this team going to address some of those issues on defense. I think there are still questions going into this season. And so, the real question marks in Pittsburgh are on the defensive side. Of course, as you said, offensively, this team was loaded a year ago and, remains that way. Still a very good offensive line. Ben, Bell, Brown, all returning. And then you've got, Juju emerging into his second year now. And this rookie James Washington has looked very good throughout the preseason. So I think the expectation in Pittsburgh is, to compete for a title, but there are really still questions about this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Tony, you brought up Le'Veon Bell, and as we're recording this on September 2nd, he still hasn't reported to Pittsburgh. What's the latest? Is he going to report in time to play this week, or is he really going to hold out and not show up in Pittsburgh for some time?
So I think the expectation has been all off season that this would be very similar to what happened last year, which was that he showed up the Friday after the last preseason game and then ultimately signed his franchise tag on the Monday and started practicing. That hasn't happened yet, right? So here we are a year later. Still has not shown up. Now, Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reported that Le'Veon Bell has been telling teammates that Labor Day is the day he will show up. And so maybe that still happens tomorrow. I think that's the hope of everyone. And there are no alarm bells going off in Pittsburgh just yet about Le'Veon Bell. But if he doesn't show up tomorrow, then I think you're going to start to see real worry in Pittsburgh about just when is Le'Veon Bell going to show up. Now, there's real incentive for him to show up, right? Because he's due $14.5 million, but every game he skips, he misses out on whatever it is, $850,000, right? I think he will ultimately show up, and I don't think there's any room for concern yet. But if we get past tomorrow, Labor Day, then we're going to have some concern.
The Steelers do have a new offensive coordinator. We know that because the Browns hired their former one in Todd Haley. Mm-hmm. His name is Randy Fichtner. I'm sure I just said that wrong, but oh well. What can we expect from him, and how big of a difference is it going to be from Todd Haley to Randy? The Steelers, look, they would either like throw the ball 50 times and run the ball 40 times. It's either kind of a one or the other thing from what I saw. What can we expect from Randy this season?
So, yeah, from a play calling perspective, I think Steeler fans are expecting it to be different as far as the play calling. That was where Todd Haley was most criticized in Pittsburgh, was especially the kind of scripted first 10, 15 plays, situational football, red zone play calling. I think that's where the most change can be expected. But according to everyone around the Steelers, the playbook itself, the kind of scheme that the Steelers are going to run offensively, is not going to change much. Now, what we saw in training camp was interesting. The Steelers do have some interesting tight ends, Vance McDonald, Jesse James, and Xavier Grimble. And certainly Randy Fichtner has seen that, and he wants to use those guys, kind of spread out wide or put multiple tight ends on the field at the same time. And so I think you're going to start to see that from the offense this year, or more of that this year. But ultimately, I think the offense is going to look the same. It's still going to be an offense that revolves around getting the ball to its playmakers, getting the ball to AB, getting the ball to Le'Veon Bell, and then kind of utilizing the rest of the talent offensively. When defenses decide that we're going to we're going to lock down AB, or we're going to stack the box against Le'Veon, you're going to start to see Juju and Vance McDonald get involved more. But I don't expect big things to change from a schematic standpoint. I do expect the play calling hopefully will be better. I think the relationship between Ben Roethlisberger and Randy Fichtner is very strong. Randy Fichtner was the quarterback coach for Ben Roethlisberger for many, many years. And we're going to see more no huddle now, right? That they were using that previously in kind of a to kind of upstart the offense in games where it was slow going, right? Get the no huddle going, get the offense started up. They had a lot of success doing that, but they didn't use it as often. I think with the relationship between Fichtner and Ben, you're going to see that more as well. So I think you're going to see it's going to be very similar to Todd Haley, but hopefully Fichtner can go in and improve some of the things that Haley was not great at, specifically play calling.
You talked about how the defense struggled towards the end of the last year, and they brought in some new additions during the offseason. They brought in John Bostic, and inside linebacker. They brought in Morgan Burnett for the safety position, and then they drafted Terrell Edmonds, which a lot of people called a reach on draft night. How do you see those new additions helping the defense?
It's been interesting. So John Bostic came in at inside linebacker in free agency. I think a lot of Steeler fans were hopeful that he would not be the only addition at inside linebacker, that the Steelers would be able to go out in the draft and get another one, someone like a Rashaan Evans from Alabama, who the Steelers reportedly coveted highly. That didn't happen, and so, yeah, Bostic is going to be the starter now. Concerns about him throughout the preseason. He looked at times, his athleticism is in question. He's not a great coverage linebacker, hadn't been throughout the preseason. So there are definitely concerns at linebacker. As far as Morgan Burnett and Terrell Edmonds, again, more question marks, right? Because the Steelers cut Mike Mitchell, who was their longtime free safety. They have Sean Davis, who has been the in-the-box strong safety for the last couple years. They bring in Morgan Burnett from Green Bay, who, again, better in the box, although he's played all over that Green Bay defense. And then you bring in Terrell Edmonds in the draft, who, again, is more of an in-the-box guy right now, though very freakishly athletic and maybe could make the transition to free safety, but you wouldn't want to do that to him in his rookie year. And so there were questions all offseason about why do we have 3 in-the-box safety types? Who is going to play free safety? And the answer to that question is that Sean Davis, who's been the longtime in-the-box safety for the Steelers, is going to move to free safety. He had a poor year a year ago, and I think that the hope is that because of his athletic traits, he can make the transition to free safety better than Terrell Edmonds would early in his career. And so that's what we're going to see. We're going to see Sean Davis at free safety. We're going to see Morgan Burnett at strong, and then Terrell Edmonds will kind of fill in when the Steelers go to a 3 safety look or a dime look. They have this new dollar defense, which is 7 defensive backs on the field. You'll see Edmonds in that role as well. But yeah, look, the question marks that we ended 2017 with as Steeler fans, they didn't get addressed in the offseason, right? There are still the same question marks, which is, are we going to get any better at inside linebacker, where we were very poor at the end of last season and teams were kind of running all over us, as you saw Jacksonville do? And then in the secondary, are we going to still have the kind of communication issues and allowing these big plays over and over like we saw at the end of last season? And hopefully that gets better with Sean Davis, who, again, is more athletic. And hopefully we get better at covering tight ends with someone like Morgan Burnett. But again, those are all question marks at this point. And there's question marks about Morgan Burnett. In fact, there are rumors that he may be put on injured reserve sometime today or tomorrow. And so we may be seeing more of Terrell Edmonds in that strong safety role.
Both me and Jack are big-time Ohio State fans. And last year, watching what happened to Ryan Shazier was incredibly tough. And you saw the defense was not the same after he was injured. How much is the defense going to miss having him this season? And do you expect Ryan to join this team? Do you expect him to even play again?
Yeah, I don't. I should say I hope he doesn't play again, because, again, like you said, that was really tough last season what happened to him. Now, and it has what has turned from tragedy has really turned into kind of an inspirational story with Ryan. Watching the progress that he's made, and again, that hit happened in November of last year, so we're not even a year removed, and he's walking again and walking without the use of a cane. So that really has been inspiring to watch in his recovery. But I wouldn't expect him to play again, given how severe that injury was. Now, as far as what does Shazier's loss mean for this defense? You really saw it at the end of last season, and what you saw was kind of how ill-prepared this defense was for losing a guy like Ryan Shazier. Now, look, in fairness to the Steelers, right, Shazier was their real playmaker in the front, or on the defense as a whole, right? I mean, he was the one true playmaker that defense had, and so losing that is going to be tough. Anytime you lose a playmaker like that on defense, it's going to be tough. This team needs a player to step up in his place. Whether they have a lot of young guys that could do it. We've already talked about Sean Davis. I'm not sure that at a free safety position he's going to become a star. You've got T.J. Watt from a year ago. We need a guy, or Bud Dupree at the edge rusher, right? If this team could find a premier pass rusher again, I think that would very much help. They just need someone on this defense to step up. They have a lot of youth, but a lot of youth that hasn't really broken through just yet. And that's the hope in 2018, is that we're going to see that kind of emergence, whether it be from T.J. Watt, whether it be from Bud Dupree or one of these young players. The other player to watch defensively, specifically at the inside linebacker position, is a guy named Matthew Thomas, who the Steelers got as an undrafted free agent at inside linebacker. He made the roster, and the Steelers even created a defense for him to get him on the field at inside linebacker. They call it the Seminole defense. It's used primarily on 3rd and long situations, but that'll be interesting as well. He's very, very athletic, highly recruited out of high school. Was disappointing at Florida State, had some off-the-field issues, but he looked very good in training camp and continued to improve throughout preseason. So you may see him. I don't know if we'll see him in this game in week 1, but that's something we can talk about maybe when we talk about the matchup mid-season.
Right before we get to the game plan, I do see there is a couple former Browns on the Steelers defense. How has Joe Hayden looked for you guys so far through the preseason? And also, what is the role for LJ Fort going to be as the backup to John Bostic?
Yeah, so Joe Hayden has been Joe Hayden, right? He's not the Joe Hayden of old. He's not the All-Pro anymore, but he's definitely one of the better cornerbacks the Steelers have had in a long time. Really, this team has struggled to have consistent play at the cornerback position since Ike Taylor retired. Yeah, that must have been 4 or 5 years ago now, right? So he has been a bright spot in a Steelers secondary that has been suspect for so many years. I liked what he did this offseason. Again, this was the first offseason he's had in a while where he wasn't rehabbing some sort of injury that he had at the end of the last season, right? So he's able to go in healthy this offseason. And you saw that in training camp. I thought he had a very good camp. Limited time in the preseason. Again, he's one of these veterans that Tomlin doesn't really give a whole lot of playing time to in the preseason. So we didn't see a ton of him. I thought he had a very nice camp. Again, I think he'll have similar to what he did last season. No big mistakes. He's not going to get 5-6 interceptions or anything like that, but he'll be solid in this secondary. And then as far as LJ Fort, I really like LJ Fort. I think LJ Fort's one of the most underrated players on the Steelers, but the coaching staff clearly doesn't feel that way. He's kind of buried on the depth chart. The Steelers are going to go with Bostic at inside linebacker. They're going to go with Matakevich as kind of a backup there. And then Fort is like buried at the 5th inside linebacker. He's on the team probably right now for his special teams. He was a kind of more passing down linebacker at the end of last season after they lost Shazier. I think he had a very good training camp, but again, there's just too many players above him that the Steelers like better for him to really see the field. I think it would take somewhat of a catastrophic injury situation at inside linebacker, meaning that multiple players go down before I think you would see LJ Fort see the field. So yeah, that's kind of where we are with Fort.
As a fellow member of the AFC North, what are your opinions of what the Browns have done this offseason with the hiring of John Dorsey, drafted Baker Mayfield #1, bringing in Todd Haley as offensive coordinator, kind of your overall viewpoint of what the Cleveland Browns have done this offseason?
I really liked it. I really did. And I've been a fan of what they've been doing for the last 2 seasons. I like the draft that they had a year ago as well. But, they had the first pick. They knew they had to take a quarterback. Well, I was excited that finally the Browns with a top pick were going to take their franchise quarterback. And I thought what was interesting this year is that there was a perfect quarterback for them to take, and that was Baker Mayfield. I think they made the right choice. I know they were criticized. Maybe Baker was Baker as highly touted as someone like Sam Darnold, right? Was Darnold a better pick at 1? Maybe, but not for the Browns. I think what the Browns need more than anything is not just an infusion of talent. They need a culture change, right? I mean, there's just a culture of losing in Cleveland right now, right? And that's what leads to something like 1-31 over the last 2 years. They need someone to come in and change that culture. And for a lot of teams, that starts at quarterback, right? You want a guy who's in there, who's confident, who's going to make everyone around him better. And that's what you get from a guy like Baker Mayfield. I really like Baker. First of all, I like his play, right, at Oklahoma, but I also like his attitude and the way that he approaches the game. And I like the way he's approached this situation. It's an interesting situation because he's the #1 overall pick, but he's not going to be the starter. And so and for a guy like Baker, you might think, he could react to that poorly, but he really hasn't. I think he's handled that situation really well. I love bringing in Jarvis Landry, especially if you can bring him in with a guy like Josh Gordon. I don't know about Jarvis Landry as your #1 receiver, but Josh Gordon #1 and then Jarvis Landry #2. I think I like that. I really like Njoku, the tight end. I loved him coming out of college. In fact, I think the Browns traded up right before the Steelers to take Njoku a year ago. So yeah, look, I think offensively they are certainly loading up full of talent. Defensively, there's probably still question marks, but again, you can hide a lot of your question marks on defense with elite pass rushing. And Myles Garrett looks like he's going to be terrific. So yeah, I love what the Browns have done from a talent perspective. It really is at this point. I think it's widely assumed, right? It's just a matter of time before the Browns kind of emerge as a contender again. And what I'm excited about is it may not be 2018, right? But at some point in the future, the Browns-Steelers rivalry is going to be back on again, right? And that is exciting because that was my youth, right? Growing up, it was Browns-Steelers. Those games were always hard-fought, tough games. It hasn't been that way recently, but I'm hopeful that in the next couple seasons, that rivalry will reemerge.
Yeah, we're hopeful for it too, for sure. We need to get the rivalry back going, but let's focus onto the game. And, to bring back to Le'Veon Bell, if he's not available, it looks like James Conner would be the next running back up for the Steelers. Are the Steelers confident at him carrying the load at running back if Bell doesn't show up?
I think so, based on what he's done this preseason. A year ago, I would have told you no, but after what he's done this preseason, I think so. He's looked very, very good. Like, he looks like a different player out there. He's talked about the kind of body transformation that he went through this offseason in getting his body right. And he looks terrific out there. Really explosive, very slippery. I love to see the running backs who can kind of just slide off of tackles. And he showed that throughout the preseason. Very explosive. He had some big runs throughout the preseason. So I think there's a lot of excitement about James Conner right now. Of course, he's a local kid. He's got a great story as a cancer survivor. So yeah, I think they would be. Now there's question marks with James Conner, right? Coming off of last season, there were question marks as far as could he be a good pass blocker, right? He's going to be good at blitz pickup. We haven't really seen that throughout the preseason just yet. And would he be good as a receiver? The Steelers-Titans third preseason game was just basically the game plan was just get James Conner the ball through the air whenever you can. And he looked terrific in that game. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be. In fact, I think Steeler fans at this point are kind of expecting, even if Le'Veon Bell is available, I think we're going to see a lot of James Conner in this game anyway. Last year's Steelers-Browns game was kind of characterized by the Steelers not using Le'Veon Bell as much. I think he only had 10, maybe 15 touches the entire game. So that became a problem offensively because the Steelers had to rely so much on the passing game. I think this year they're not going to make the same mistake twice. That Le'Veon, if he's available, will play. But I think you'll also see some James Conner as well. In fact, I think you'll see a split between Le'Veon Bell and James Conner early in the season.
How motivated do you think Todd Haley is after, for all the media reports, and I don't know how much of it is true or not, but all the rift between him and Big Ben, and how motivated do you think Todd Haley is to come out on Sunday and pull out all the stops against Pittsburgh?
Oh, I think if you watch Hard Knocks, you see how competitive Todd Haley is. I think this is going to be, this is kind of a revenge game for him, no doubt about it. I think he's going to be extremely fired up to take this young upstart Browns team and try to find a way to win against the Steelers. And they're in a good spot, right? I mean, look, this is as a Steelers fan, I will tell you, this is not the time you want to be playing at the Browns in 2018. Week 1 is not the time you want to do it because, again, the Browns are coming in with all this hype, all this expectation, right? And again, they're coming in fired up off of a nice preseason, loading up full of all this talent. And for the Steelers, right, we're coming off of this devastating loss in Jacksonville. We've kind of got the burden of being, this Super Bowl contender who has to reprove itself after what happened in Jacksonville. So, yeah, I think Todd's going to come in and look, he's going to, first of all, this defense, the Steelers defense has some real deficiencies, as we've talked about, right? Covering the middle of the field, running up the middle. What's going to happen at the safety position if Terrell Edmonds has to play? That's going to be a problem early on for this team. What is Sean Davis going to look like as a free safety? And Todd Haley is going to try and exploit all of those things. So yeah, he's going to come in with a real fire, and he's. Look, he knows Ben Roethlisberger, right? So he knows the kind of coverages, the things that Ben Roethlisberger doesn't like to see out there. Yeah, I think he's gonna be very fired up to win this game.
Last year the Browns defense had a hard time covering the tight end. I think in the opener we gave up 2 touchdowns to Jesse James. I'm sure the Steelers offense knows that, and I don't think much has changed. The Browns still push the free safety back like 20, 25 yards. If you're the Steelers offensive coordinator, wouldn't you make it a focus to get Vance McDonald and Jesse James involved in the passing game quickly?
Vance McDonald may not be available in this game, which I think is going to be really tough for the Steelers because he was terrific in camp, or the short time we saw him in camp. He was terrific a year ago in that Jacksonville game as well, and there was a lot of expectation this offseason that he would be a big part. If he's not available, it's going to be tougher because Jesse James more limited as a tight end. I still think, there are those times when, the offense definitely flows through the tight end in Pittsburgh. But I think without Vance, it's going to be tougher to do that. I think this offense is still going to try and run through Antonio Brown and Juju and the wide receivers, and then Jesse's there kind of whenever he's open type of deal. If Vance McDonald is healthy and ready to go, which we're not sure yet, but let's say he is, I think absolutely yes. Right? Vance McDonald is a very, very good tight end, and he showed that at the end of last season. He's the kind of tight end the Steelers have been looking for since Heath Miller retired. So yeah, I would be excited to see what how the Steelers utilize both Jesse James and Vance McDonald on the field at the same time if they were available. I'm just not sure that that's going to be the case though in this game. And if not, I think you're likely to see a healthy dose of AB, a healthy dose of Juju, and the new wide receiver they have, James Washington.
You've talked about the problems that the Steelers have in the middle of the defense. The Browns have a new offensive line. Joe Thomas isn't on that offensive line anymore. He's not a left tackle. Joel Bitonio is. How do you see the Steelers trying to exploit the kind of new Browns offensive line?
Yeah, so the Steelers come in with a lot of question marks as far as their pass rush goes. They led the league in sacks a year ago, but 12.5 came from Cam Hayward, their defensive end. 8 came from their inside linebacker, Vince Williams, and 4 came from their nickel corner, Mike Hilton. This is a linebacker factory. It has been a linebacker factory, but it isn't anymore. This is going to be a big test for T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree early on because the Browns' offensive line to me right now is a little suspect. And for a Steeler pass rush that wants to be better on the edge, this is the perfect opportunity to do that. But look, Bud Dupree has become this athletic freak who relies so much on his speed that he rarely, he's like a 4 to 5 sack a year guy every year because he uses that speed rush, but tackles know that and they just kind of let him fly around the quarterback and it's easy to just step up in the pocket. I'm hopeful that guys like the T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree can step up in this game and we can force Tyrod Taylor into some bad decisions, that kind of thing. If not, though, you're going to see the Steelers do what they always do, which is manufacture pressure by bringing guys from weird positions and trying to bring Vince Williams up the middle, Vince Williams around the end, right? Bringing Mike Hilton on nickel blitzes, that kind of thing to try and manufacture pressure because this team has been so it's been so hard for this team to get pressure with 4 at times. So this will be an interesting matchup to watch. When the Steelers rush 4, are they getting pressure? If yes, I think this is going to be a very good game for the Steeler defense. If no, and the Steelers have to start utilizing blitzes and bringing pressure different ways, it's going to open things up behind them because, again, as we talked about, the Steelers secondary, especially at the safety position, a little suspect right now. So I think you can tell a lot just from how the Steelers do when they are only rushing 4.
Jack, you said you had a question. Go ahead.
Tony, when you look at the Steelers offense, everybody focuses on Antonio Brown, but Juju Smith-Schuster had a breakout rookie year last year. And then, of course, some people tend to forget they drafted James Washington out of Oklahoma State. How do you expect them to play a big role in the Steelers offense? Week 1, definitely, against the Browns secondary.
Yeah, so week 1 is going to be an interesting one because we haven't seen – so James Washington has been very, very exciting throughout the preseason and throughout training camp. He's gotten really all of the buzz. We talk about the Steelers rookie class. He's gotten all of the buzz. He's been an unbelievable combat catch guy, bringing down these crazy catches throughout training camp. He did it against Joe Hayden. I mean, he did it against the best corners the Steelers had, and then he brought that into the preseason games as well, and you saw him make some crazy catches in preseason. So, he's very much making a name for himself in that way. He's also very good as a deep receiver, as we saw in college. He's got deceptive speed. He only ran 4.5 in the 40, but he's got really deceptive speed and loses corners very easily on those deep routes. It's a strange thing to watch. Now, here's the problem for James Washington. He didn't really play with Ben Roethlisberger, and for rookie receivers who haven't played with Ben, it takes some time for those receivers to understand the nuance of playing with Ben Roethlisberger and what Ben's looking for. All the big plays, all the big catches that James Washington made, it was Mason Rudolph or Josh Dobbs throwing him the football. So I wouldn't expect a lot out of James Washington week 1. Anything they really get there, kind of icing on the cake. But now Juju, on the other hand, has looked terrific in training camp. Had a very good preseason in the limited action he saw. I think he had 2 touchdowns in the limited action he saw. He's, again, like you said, he was a breakout player a year ago. Looks like he could be even better this season. The Steelers don't need him to be a whole lot better, right? Because they still have Le'Veon and they still have Antonio Brown. But one of the things, if we go back and look at what happened last season Steelers Browns and why that game was so close. I think it was because Ben Roethlisberger had real trouble getting back on the same page with Martavis Bryant, getting on the same page with Juju Smith-Schuster, who was playing in his first NFL game at that point. And it caused that Steeler offense to kind of get into a rut in the middle of that game. I would hope, the hope in Pittsburgh is that that's not going to happen again because we have Juju going into year 2. You still got Antonio Brown. And if James Conner has to play, he's seen a ton of reps with Ben Roethlisberger. So, I think there's a real hope that having Juju as your number 2 receiver is going to open things up offensively early on while we wait for someone like James Washington to develop and while we wait for Le'Veon Bell to kind of get back into football shape and look like Le'Veon Bell again.
And then my last question, to flip over to the Browns offensive side, obviously Josh Gordon wasn't with the Browns a year ago at the opener. He's here, and then also we added Jarvis Landry. Do you think that the Steelers secondary, obviously specifically Burns and Hayden, do you think they're going to be able to contain both those guys, or do you think that they're going to be exploited by both Jarvis Landry and Josh Gordon?
That's a good question. Okay, so from my understanding, you guys are going to play Josh Gordon on the outside, and then Jarvis will play as a slot receiver, or is Jarvis going to play on the outside as well?
I think he's going to play on the outside as well, and then you'll see more of Njoku in the slot versus lining up at tight end.
Interesting. Okay, so in that way, yeah, it would be Hayden. It would be Joe Hayden and Artie Burns going up against these two. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting matchup, especially Josh Gordon. The Steelers haven't matched up against him in a while. Although I guess he was in the Week 17 game a year ago, but that game was kind of meaningless. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Again, it's one of those things where Josh Gordon kind of take the top off of a defense. That's where we're going to see. We're going to see if Sean Davis, the new free safety, has it or not. As far as Jarvis Landry, the Steelers really struggle against those kind of possession receivers who can exploit the middle of the field and get some yards after catch. If Todd Haley's game plan coming in is to run Jarvis on a lot of like mesh routes over the middle and kind of exploit the cover 2, cover 3 looks that the Steelers like to run, the Steelers are going to have a problem with that because at inside linebacker, they don't have a ton of speed. And so if you get Jarvis Landry ahead of steam and get him going upfield, it's going to be a problem for this team. I'm also worried about what's going to happen with, you talked about David Njoku. I'm really worried what's going to happen with David Njoku in this game, especially if Morgan Burnett can't play. The Steelers have a really hard time covering these big tight ends, especially down the seam. I expect Todd Haley will try to exploit that a lot in this football game. There are some mismatches in this game that favor the Browns a little bit. Again, just because there's so many questions in the Steelers secondary. But if Sean Davis lives up to the expectation, I think if Joe Hayden can slow down Josh Gordon, I think they're and if the Steelers front seven can stop the Browns running game, then the Browns may have some problems moving the football.
As we wrap up here, do you want to give us a prediction for Sunday?
My prediction? Yeah. So I think this is going to be an extremely close game. I think it's going to be far closer than people expect. The Steelers rightly should be favorites in this game, right? Heavy favorites. They're coming off of a 13-3 season. The Browns are 0-16. But like I said at the top, this is not the time you want to be playing the Cleveland. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you do not want to be playing the Cleveland Browns, a division opponent, in Week 1 on the road, coming off of how the Steelers finished 2017 and how the Browns are excited and rejuvenated with all this new talent in 2018. This is going to be, I think it's going to be very similar to last season. I think it'll actually be closer to last season. Even though last year was a 3-point win, the Browns kind of scored that last touchdown late, and then the Steelers were able to just run the clock out. I think this one's going to be much more back and forth and closer throughout. I would say it's going to be something like 28-24 Steelers. I think there is a real chance the Steelers lose this football game. They have a tendency under Mike Tomlin to play down to opponents on the road. They don't always lose those games, but they certainly are far closer than they should be. Even in a 13-3 season last year, this team didn't lose a lot of games, but one of them was on the road to the Cleveland or to the Chicago Bears in an inexplicable loss. So this game is going to be very, very close, I think.
Well, Tony, I absolutely appreciate you coming on, talking to us about the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns, previewing this game with us. You want to go ahead and plug everything you're doing with the Locked On Steelers podcast?
Yeah, you can find Locked On Steelers over at LockedOnSteelers.com, or you can search on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you find your podcast. Search for Locked On Steelers. You can find me there, and you can find me on Twitter at Steeler Country.
All right, Tony. I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully, I think we play again. Was it week 8, week 9 or so?
Yeah, mid-season. Yep.
So we'll definitely get you back on here and preview that game as well.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thanks, Tony. Talk to you soon. All right, that was Tony Serino of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I really thank Tony for coming on with us. There were some great discussion points about the game this Sunday, and I think that's what we're going to continue to talk about here with me and Jack. Jack, when you look at this game on Sunday, what to you is the biggest storyline heading into this game for either team?
I think ultimately the biggest storyline is going to be the weather. I don't know if anybody hasn't been paying attention to the forecast. The remains of the tropical storm that just hit the Gulf Coast, I think it was on Wednesday or Tuesday, is going to be up here in Ohio. And they're calling for 3 to 5 inches of rain on Sunday, which is crazy amount to think about just for one day. I really think that the weather is going to play a huge factor in this game. And at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who runs the ball better. And you look at the Browns with Todd Haley as the offensive coordinator. You have Duke Johnson, you have Carlos Hyde, and you have Nick Chubb. You have a three-headed monster in the backfield. When you look at the Steelers side, you have Stephen Ridley, and you have James Conner, who is a second-year player out of Pitt. So, and you have a brand new offensive coordinator on the Steelers side of things. If it's going to be rainy and it's going to be muddy, then what's the best thing to do in this type of conditions? Run the football. And, the Browns' run defense was great last year. And, I think they gave up the second fewest yards per carry in the National Football League. And I feel like their defense got stronger. And the Steelers' run defense, I don't think was as strong as the Browns was. So I think whoever can run the ball the best and whoever stopped the run the best is ultimately going to win this game.
Yeah, you just heard us with Tony. The major concern of the Steelers defense is that the interior part of their defensive line, and they don't have Ryan Shazier at middle linebacker either, so they're not going to be extremely strong against the run. So, if those are the weather conditions for Sunday, when the Browns have a three-headed monster at running back, I think that really favors the Brown and what will be probably a low-scoring, extremely muddy game. Unfortunately, I got tickets to go on Sunday, so I'm prepared to get rained on. I got rained on the golf course last night. I'll probably get rained on Sunday at the football game. You know what? Bring it on. That's what AFC North football is. It's that tough, muddy, gritty kind of football. And, if it's going to rain on Sunday, I think it's going to make if we win, it's going to make that game much more enjoyable, because it's, that this is a Brown Steelers kind of football game. If those weather conditions really show themselves on Sunday. You mentioned the weather. Let's talk about the Steelers a little bit. I mentioned we talked to Tony on Sunday, so they weren't sure what the situation was going to be with Le'Veon Bell. We now know the situation. He's not going to play on Sunday. He still hasn't shown up. He hasn't reported yet. Chances are he could report on Friday or Saturday, but if he does, he's still not going to play for the Steelers on Sunday. James Conner is going to be starting. How big of a blow is this for the Steelers not to have Le'Veon Bell? And you've seen teammates of Le'Veon, especially the offensive line, say some interesting things about their running back, and they believe he should be there with how much he's getting paid. And there's an obvious disconnect between everybody on that Steelers offensive line and in that running back room. So, how much are the Steelers going to miss Le'Veon Bell on Sunday? You're muted.
And I apologize once again. At first I thought they were going to miss him, but then, Aditi Kinkhabwala mentioned earlier in the week, Le'Veon Bell was on the field last year and was ineffective. So if he was going to be there anyways, he's not in game shape. But he's not even going to be there at all. And I'm sure the Steelers have been preparing for the fact that he probably wasn't going to be here. But, James Conner, this is a big moment for him. It's his first career start. He was limited last year, only 32 carries, especially when you have a running back like Bell. The backups really aren't going to see much of the field. It's a big moment for him, obviously. First career start. He's from Erie, PA, so he's right in the heart of Browns and Steelers country, being from that area. But, I don't think they're going to miss him too much. Like I said, he played last year, and we limited the run game to like 35 yards. I think this year they're going to run the football a lot more just because of the conditions that are being forecasted right now. So I don't think they'll miss him too much. I'm sure they have a game plan in mind of what they're going to do, and I think they're fully prepared to giving Connor a load of carries in these conditions. And if they need to, they'll throw out Stephen Ridley for some carries as well.
When you look at the Browns' defensive front, do you have confidence that they're going to be able to stop any kind of rushing attack that the Steelers call against them? I want to say run at them, but that didn't really sound well. But is the Browns' front going to hold up against the Steelers' running game?
I think so. I think we did adjust some in terms of the roster on the defensive front, but I think that the run defense was strong last year. I wouldn't expect it to change. They also added some guys to the defensive front that are strong run defenders as well. So with Myles Garrett, Agba, Ogunjobi, I think Trevon Coley, who had a great year stopping the run last year. I expect those guys to bring it, and then the guys behind them to step up and play. I think Greg Williams and Clyde Simmons has those boys ready, and even at the linebacker spot with Collins, Kirksey, Schobert, and Burgess, if he can play, which I'm not expecting him to play right now because he's still in the concussion protocol. I expect that front seven to shut down the run.
The Browns did claim, is it Anthony Zettel? Is that the first name? Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about the first name. I knew the last name. Do you think he's going to be much of a factor this Sunday, or do you think it's going to take him a couple weeks to get involved on that defensive front?
It's tough to say. I mean, he's been working in the Lions system, so it's not like he's not in game shape. It's just he's got to get used to the playbook and how the Browns defense does things, but they may throw him out there. He was a strong run defender, and in these type of weather, they need the guys that can stop the run because it's going to play a factor in the decision and outcome of this game. So maybe they do throw Zettel out there. It'll be interesting. I wouldn't expect him to play right away. I would expect some of the other guys that they brought in to play just because they have a week full of practice in them. But if Zettel can go out there and contribute, that'd be an added bonus to this Browns defense.
Let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that on Sunday we have normal weather conditions. Under normal weather conditions, what does this Browns offense need to do to be effective against Pittsburgh's defense?
They got to put touchdowns on the board. I think that's when you have this much firepower on the offensive side that the Browns haven't had in a long time. At the end of the day, you got to put touchdowns on the board. You got to see a mix of what they were able to do against Buffalo and what they were able to do against the Giants in the preseason. That's running the ball at a high level and also mixing it in with the passing game. And you have Gordon, you have Callaway, you have Njoku, you have Jarvis Landry, you have Duke Johnson, who's a threat running and throwing the ball. You have catching the ball. You have Carlos Hyde, you have Nick Chubb. There's so much talent on the offensive side of the football, and the Browns haven't had that in a long time. And at the end of the day, if they can't get touchdowns on the board and they're just, either punting the ball or just kicking field goals, then you're not going to be able to keep up with a Pittsburgh offense, which, and under normal weather conditions, is a high-level offense that could put 30 points up. And I think this Browns offense has the potential to do so under normal conditions. But, that's the end result at the end of the day is scoring touchdowns in the National Football League. And if the weather was perfect, that's what I would expect the Browns to do.
Let's continue under normal conditions and talk a little bit more about the Pittsburgh offense. Obviously, they have a lot of firepower with Big Ben, James Washington, the rookie, Antonio Bryant as well, Juju Smith-Schuster. What do the Browns need to do? Jesse James, Vance McDonald as well. Although I thought I saw McDonald might be ruled out for Sunday. I can't remember. I think I saw something like that. But anyway, looking at those offensive weapons that Big Ben has in the passing game, last season the Browns had a tough time covering tight ends. Are they going to be able to is this defense going to be able to keep everything underneath them and not let the big plays explode to Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown?
Yeah, I think they have the potential to. I think with the amount of talent we have in the front seven, I think the secondary can play where they're supposed to play. I don't agree with how Greg Williams lines up his defensive backs. In certain situations are lining up 10 yards off the ball or perhaps even 25 yards off the ball. But I think there's enough talent on the defensive front as well as at the linebacker position that, the secondary can shut these receivers down. Not shut them down, but lower their production, per se. Antonio Brown's going to be tough to defend. We all know that. He seems like he gets 10 catches, 180 yards, and a touchdown every time he plays the Browns. But, I thought the secondary showed some things in the preseason. They got to carry that over to the regular season. But, it's going to be tough because, like I said, on our AFC North preview, they have Antonio Brown, who's the best receiver in football. Juju Smith-Schuster had a strong rookie year, and I would expect him to back it up with another strong season. And they also have James Washington, who might not be effective week 1 this Sunday, just because, he's still got to get acclimated with Big Ben, much like Tony had told us. But this offense has a lot of firepower, regardless of Le'Veon Bell's off the field. So the Browns defense has to be prepared because the Steelers can throw a lot of different things at you offensively.
Would you say that the Browns are hopeful for crappy weather conditions on Sunday so they really don't have to deal with Big Ben throwing the ball over them?
It depends. He still might throw the ball around a lot more than expected. So, we don't know exactly what these weather conditions are going to be like. I think right now the rain is the majority of the rain is supposed to come at night, but it's still supposed to rain throughout the day Sunday. So if Ben can throw the ball in these rainy conditions, which, he's been around this weather in Ohio his whole life. And obviously the weather in Pittsburgh's pretty much the same as it is in Cleveland. So I wouldn't be surprised if they still throw the ball around some.
Maybe the biggest storyline for the Browns going into Sunday is we still do not know who's starting at left tackle and at left guard for the Browns. They've changed around everything this preseason. Most recently, Joel Bitonio has been at left tackle, and Austin Corbett's been at left guard. We've heard a lot of rumblings that maybe undrafted free agent Desmond Harrison could start the season at left tackle. What do you make of this whole situation and where the Browns have come from post Joe Thomas retiring?
I think the decision's been made. Zach Jackson from The Athletic alluded to it as well with today's roster move. They adding Anthony Zettel and they cut the backup center Aaron Neary. I think they're going to go with Desmond Harrison at left tackle. I think they're going to slide Joel Bitonio back to left guard, and I think Austin Corbett just became the backup swing guy, whether it's at guard or at center. I don't agree with it, but also I'm not an NFL head coach, and if Bob Wiley and Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley are all in agreement of this move, then I support it until it doesn't work. But if Desmond Harrison's ready, which he could be, and they might have been working on this behind the scenes, then that's fine. But I just hope that he doesn't have a bad performance on Sunday and it rattles his confidence. Because he's going up against Cameron Hayward, who's one of the best defensive linemen in football. So it'll be interesting to see how that matchup shakes out. It changes the direction of the game one way or another.
Is the 2018 left tackle going to be the 2017 quarterback situation, to where he would just flip-flopped? How about flip-flopped back and forth between Kaiser, Hogan, and Cody Kessler?
I hope not. I hope that Desmond Harrison comes in and proves to have the talent that everybody's talked about that he possesses. This is a guy who a year ago was making his return to football after a 2-year absence. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that during the game on Sunday. And hopefully he is the left tackle that takes over for Joe Thomas, not replacing Joe Thomas, because like I've said countless times on here, no one can replace him. But hopefully he can be the starting left tackle if he is, which I think he's going to be, and holds down that spot.
All right, let's get down to business here and make our predictions for Sunday. Give me your final score for this game and your biggest storyline for the game.
When was the last time we won a season opener, Anthony?
It's been like 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. I can't remember.
I think it was 2004.
Has it really been that long?
Yep, it was against Baltimore. But
okay.
You know what? All streaks are meant to die, and that streak's gonna die. The 17-game losing streak's gonna die, and the 17-game losing streak against the AFC North dies. I think the Cleveland Browns are going to win and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 17-13. And we just talked about that offensive line. If Desmond Harrison can step up and be that left tackle, and this line plays up to its ability, then they need to take that ball and run it down Pittsburgh's throat with Hyde, Duke, and Chubb. And I think the Browns are going to win this game. And there is going to be, and I think Josh Gordon alluded to it, he said this would be as big as winning the Super Bowl. And I ultimately think if Cleveland beats Pittsburgh on Sunday, which I think they will, Cleveland's going to go nuts. There's going to be free beer, and despite the potential flood that's coming, it's going to be crazy on Sunday when the Browns beat the Steelers.
I have been refraining from saying what I am about to say for about 3 months now. And I think I might have mentioned this off the air to you. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do this. I am guaranteeing that the Browns are going to win on Sunday. Guaranteeing that they're winning on Sunday. You can tweet that, do whatever you want with it. But I guarantee you they are winning on Sunday. With everything that has gone on this offseason, the whole momentum that they've built, the dysfunction going on over in Pittsburgh, everything. I'm really guaranteeing that the Browns are going to win on Sunday. And if I have to give a score to you, I'm going to say Browns 20, Pittsburgh 13. I think the Browns defense is really going to hold them. And, you alluded to how the Browns running game and what you think they can do. I agree with that. I think the Browns running game is going to put up close to 150 yards, if not more, on Pittsburgh. Maybe even close to 200 between the three backs and Tyrod as well. So I think the Browns are going to run all over Pittsburgh this Sunday, and I am guaranteeing that the Browns are going to win this football game.
I like your way of thinking, man.
I've been holding that in for a really long freaking time, and you know what? It's time to unleash it. And maybe I'm extra jacked up because I'm going to the game on Sunday. As I previously mentioned, I'm going with my dad. Dad and I have never been to a Browns Steelers game together, so let's hope this one's really memorable. I mean, we might be stuck underneath a flood on our way back home or something, but you know what? It'll be all worth it when the Browns win this Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, if Cleveland beats Pittsburgh, which I think they're going to, Northeast Ohio is going to be going crazy.
All right. Let's move on from our game predictions and let's move on to Browns season predictions. What we wanted to do is I had sent out a tweet earlier on Thursday morning. This will probably be out on Friday. Asking you guys who is your Browns MVP, offensive and defensive player of the years, offensive defensive rookie of the years, your X factor for the Browns, and your most improved player for the Browns. So I'll let you, let's start. We'll do most improved, and we'll go up the list to MVP. All right. So give me your most improved player for the Browns.
My most improved player is I think it's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be Jabril Peppers. He had a tough rookie season, playing free safety. He was playing out of position, thanks to Greg Williams. He got back to strong safety at the end of the year last year, and he was showing those flashes of why he was a first-round pick and why he should have been at the strong safety position. I think he had an interception, and he was playing more closer to the line of scrimmage, and he was being that impact defender that we know he can be. Now the Browns added Demarius Randall to free safety, and they slid Breon Body Calhoun to free safety, and that lets Peppers play strong safety. He's going to play alongside with Derek Kindred. They're going to split the time there at that position, which I think is a smart move because Kindred's definitely a good ball player. But I do think Peppers, he's going to make an impact on this defense. He's that hard-hitting safety, like a Sean Taylor, like a trying to think of another one.
Well, Ed Reed, Troy
Ed
Polamalu.
Reed, yeah, just like those guys that have wreaked havoc against the Browns over the years. I think Pepper's going to do that to his opponents. We've seen him lay down some nasty hits last year against Cincinnati. He got penalized on what was a completely legal hit. But yeah, I think Peppers is definitely going to make an impact, and he's going to make a lot of people backtrack when they were calling him a bust last year, because I did see it, because people didn't think Peppers was worth that first-round pick, but I think he's going to make up for it with a strong second year.
You know what the downside of Peppers playing well this season is going to be?
What's that?
The continued Sashi Brown crap that continues to go on.
Yeah,
that's the thing that I officially declared dead, and something we'll never discuss again at least on this show.
Unless he comes on the show, which by all means, I would.
Yeah,
I have no problem.
If we can get Sashi on the show, then I think we'll explore a little bit more. But until that happens, we're done with this. All right. If I had to give you my most improved player, now this hedges on a lot. Pretty much hedges on the decision that's going to be made with the offensive line. But I think the most improved player is going to be Bitonio. And hear me out on this. When Bitonio is probably one of the best players on offense. He's really good at what he does at left guard. But if he's able to move from left guard to left tackle and play very well, we've talked about it 100 times. You're not replacing Joe Thomas, but if you're coming after him and you do a good job, I think if you're above average at the left tackle position after Joe Thomas, you're looking pretty darn good. So I think Joel has the opportunity to do that. I think he has the potential to do that. Now, this could all be completely washed out if Harrison's starting at left tackle on Sunday, but I really think Bitonio could take over the left tackle spot and hold it for the whole season and do a really good job with it. Let's move on to our biggest X factor on the Browns. Jack, who's your biggest X factor when it comes to the Browns?
It's one of the newest members of the Browns. It's Jarvis Landry. He got franchised by the Dolphins, came here. He decided to come here when he had three teams presented to him. I think it was the Titans and the Ravens were the other two teams. Excuse me. And he chose to come to Cleveland, and he signed a long-term deal. And, I don't think people quite understand how kind of impact he's going to make on offense. In his first 4 seasons, he's got 400 catches. No other wide receiver has more than that in their first 4 seasons. We haven't had a go-to, third down and short target like that since Joe Jurevicius. And, We had guys like Miles Austin and Andrew Hawkins, but I don't think they were quite as good as Jarvis Landry. And I'm going to tell you what, if you think he's as good as a slot receiver, we've seen some flashes of what he can do on the outside as well. Him and Gordon on paper, until we see them together on the field, are one of the best wide receiver tandems in the league. Hopefully those guys will be together on the field for 16 games so we can see that, it translates on the field that they're a great wide receiver tandem. But I think he's going to be an X factor because he's going to be a guy on offense that can move the chains, extend drives, and then ultimately get points on the board via touchdowns.
It's funny you mentioned Josh because he's my biggest X factor. Not having Josh for the last few seasons has obviously hurt. And, last year when he came back, we didn't expect him to do too much, but I thought he played well in those few games that he did play. This season, I think Josh, as long as everything off the field is fine, and that's obviously been the biggest question with Josh, and that's why, to me, he's my X factor. If everything is okay with Josh, he's going to be very good this year. Josh is obviously someone that can take the top off the defense. He can blow by everybody. The dude's in tremendous shape. And I think even though he didn't get with the team until a couple weeks ago, rejoined the team until a couple weeks ago, I think he's done his best to work out, done his best to get ready for this season. And, if the weather conditions are fine on Sunday, I expect him to really contribute. They're going to make him a focus, I think, because if they can use him to take the top off the defense, it's really going to open up Landry underneath. It's going to open up the running game as well. And to me, that's why Josh is the biggest X factor. If he could help do that every single game, take that top off the defense, I think the rest of the offense is really going to benefit from all that. Give me your offensive and defensive rookies of the year for the Browns.
Well, on the offensive side of the football, I'm going with Nick Chubb. He got off to a slow start that first preseason game against the New York Giants, and a lot of people were worried about him, but and his running style and his adjustment to the National Football League. But I think the rest of the preseason, he showed why he was worth the 35th pick in the draft. I think, while Carlos Hyde's going to be the starting running back, I expect Chubb to get the ball a lot this rookie year. I think Todd Haley is going to use all three running backs in a variety of ways. And I think when it comes down to it, especially when we get down towards the second half of the year and, the conditions are going to be favorable to running the football, that he's going to use Hyde and Chubb a lot. And I think Chubb is going to, and he has no problem, obviously, splitting carries with a running back because he did that in Georgia with Sony Michel. And I fully expect Chubb to be a difference maker on this team. And even if in the event Hyde goes down, and of course he has that injury history, I think Chubb can step up and be a very good starting caliber running back in this league. So he's my offensive rookie of the year. And my defensive rookie of the year, I know a lot of people will say Denzel Ward. I'm going with Jannard Avery. A fifth-round pick out of Memphis. A lot of people wouldn't expect him to make an impact, but Greg Williams showed you that if you are a talented pass rusher, he's going to find a way to get you on the field. And, a lot of sub packages, Avery showed that he put his hand in the dirt and go after the quarterback. He showed you that against Buffalo. He was involved in some stuff against Philly. When you got Myles Garrett and Agba and Ogunjobi, there's going to be a situation where Avery's going to come running up through the middle and he's going to go after the quarterback. So, while I think Denzel Ward can be a big contributor on the defensive side, I'm going to go with Avery as my defensive rookie of the year for the Browns.
I think you might have stole my notes because those are exactly who I have for offensive and defensive rookies of the year for the Browns. I'm really excited with Chubb. I don't know how much he's going to get to carry the ball this season, but I think he's going to be I think he might get anywhere from 30 to 35% of the carries on offense for the Browns. So I think, to me, the offensive rookies came down to him, Callaway, and Corbett. I really think those are the only three on offense. But anyway, I guess Desmond Harrison too. But I really think that Chubb is going to contribute well, especially not only in the running game, but in pass blocking as well. I really think that Chubb this season is going to be such a great addition. And, we mentioned how Carlos Hyde's contract is pretty much a one-year thing that they could get out of it after the end of this year. So next season, you're probably looking at Duke and Chubb running the football, and I think Chubb could be a running back that could last 5, 6, 7 years as long as he stays healthy. And there's been no shortage of love on this show for Jannard Avery. Avery is a really exciting player, and to find him in the 5th round of the NFL draft is an absolute home run. Now, we have to see everything that he's done in the preseason and whatnot translate to game days on Sunday, but I have faith that he's going to be able to do that. And if he does do that, look at NFL, because if you have him on one side, Myles Garrett on the other, you have Ogba in there, and among others, it's going to be very dangerous for opposing quarterbacks. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Avery can do this season. Give me your offensive and defensive players of the year for the Browns.
My offensive player of the year, I'm going with Josh Gordon. There's been time and time again where I don't get sucked into the hype. But, when you look at him and you look at the physical specimen he is and how he was out of football for 2 years last year, came back and was making plays again. And now, he's back. He's in Todd Haley's system. He's had great success with wide receivers, whether it's, Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Bolden, even Dwayne Bowe, he made look like a decent wide receiver in Kansas City. And then, of course, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster in Pittsburgh. He's got Jarvis Landry on one side, and then, he's got Njoku. He's got all these offensive playmakers around him. You're not going to be able to double anybody up. So Gordon's going to get looks, and we've seen what he's done in the past. He's still in physical shape, and he's still only 26, 27 years old. I just think Gordon's posed for a breakout year, and it seems like he's in the right mindset finally for the first time in like his 6 years of being a Brown. He's going to be my offensive player of the year for the Browns. And then the defensive side, and he's going to be my team MVP as well. I'm going to go ahead and just say that. It's Myles Garrett. We've seen the flashes of what he brought to the table as a rookie last year with, I think it was 7.5 sacks in 10 games. And you look at the domination that he put on display during the preseason. I'm expecting big things out of Myles Garrett this year. So much so that I've already said that I could see him getting 15 to 20 sacks. That's how much of a dominating pass rusher I expect him to be. Even Hugh Jackson today said the closest thing he's seen to the next Bruce Smith is with Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett's been working with Bruce Smith. So I'm expecting a big year out of Myles Garrett, and he's the leader of this Browns defense, and his success will dictate, I think, the Browns defense success and the overall team success for 2018.
For me, my defensive player of the year, to me, is Christian Kirksey. This guy is the leader of this defense, and I think the whole attitude for this entire defense goes through him, man. He was brought up in possibly those Khalil Mack rumors, and I kind of was, Khalil Mack is everything you want in a defensive player, but I didn't want to lose the heart and soul of this defense in that trade. Would I have done the trade? Absolutely, but it would have been tough. But, Kirksey has proven over the last few years that he's legit. And to me, this award is much more than just putting up stats. I said leadership is the biggest thing, and it's everything that Christian Kirksey has, and I'm excited to watch him continue to grow and really expand his career that he's had here in Cleveland already. My offensive player of the year is going to be David Njoku. We've seen what Todd Haley has done with the likes of Jesse James in Pittsburgh, and the options that Haley has with Njoku, really increase, having him out there. You could line Njoku up in the slot. Obviously, he'll line up at the end of the line at tight end. You could put him one-on-one on one side of the field with a linebacker or corner or whoever, and I have confidence that he's going to catch the football. This guy is such a physical freak that, to me, he's going to give the Browns their biggest mismatch over anyone else on the opponent's defense. So I'm excited for Njoku to have a big-time breakout season, and I think he's going to be a favorite of Tyrod Taylor as well in terms of targets. Since you gave your MVP, I'll give mine as well, and it's also Myles Garrett. I separated. I would have given him the Defensive Player of the Year, but I want to give two separate ones. Picking those two awards. Myles, you're right. He could have 15 to 20 sacks, but to me, the most important thing is he's going to get pressure on a quarterback almost every single play he's out there, and it's a passing situation. He's also going to be a monster in the running game as well. It's going to take two guys to double team him to prevent him from getting into the backfield. So, with that being said, he's going to do a lot more than what the stat sheet shows for Myles Garrett this season. He's going to disrupt things inside. He's going to disrupt the running game. He's going to do a lot of things, and that's why I think he's going to be the Browns MVP for this season. Any comments on any of those? You're muted.
Sorry. I have no problem with any of your predictions. I thought, or for the awards, I thought, every one of those is justifiable. Njoku as offensive player. I'm really surprised that neither one of us mentioned Duke Johnson as potential offensive player of the year, just because of the dynamic ability he can bring as both the running back and, I would assume he's going to be used plenty at wide receiver as well.
Yeah, Duke is someone that could absolutely be. I think he'd fall in more of the X Factor category because of all the different things he could do. He could run the ball, line up as a slot receiver. But you're right with Duke, and it's nice that we could go into the season and have multiple players at these awards because really in the past we haven't had that. We have so many playmakers on offense between Landry and Gordon and Duke and Hyde and Chubb and Njoku and whatnot. So there's a lot of guys on this roster, or at least on the offensive side of football, that are playmakers on offense. And it's been a long time since I think we've had this many that I think we can count on. So it's going to be really exciting to see this season play out for the Browns offense. Looking at the NFL awards, we're going to do MVP, Offensive Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and Coach of the Year. Let's just run right through these. So you can go ahead with yours.
Okay. For MVP, I'm going with Aaron Rodgers. Offensive Player of the Year, Todd Gurley. Defensive Player of the Year, I'm doubling down. I'm going with Myles Garrett as my Defensive Player of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Saquon Barkley. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Bradley Chubb. And Coach of the Year, I'm going with Bill O'Brien of the Houston Texans.
I like those. We both had the same MVP in Aaron Rodgers. My Offensive Player of the Year is Alvin Kamara. Defensive Player of the Year, Khalil Mack. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Saquon Barkley. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Derwin James. And my Coach of the Year is going to be Sean McVay of the LA Rams.
All excellent choices.
I think these awards are so tough to predict, but as the season progresses, they become more apparent. All right, now that we have that, let's give our first, in the last episode, I teased that I said there was going to be a second team from the AFC North in the playoffs. I picked the Steelers to win the division, and I think there's a second team that could potentially make it. And unfortunately, it's not the Browns. I think the Ravens are going to bounce back and make the playoffs this season. The Browns are going to get close, but I'm not fully buying into everything this season. But I think it's something that could be. I think they're going to get close to it. It's going to be a fun, exciting season. But with that, let's move into who you got in your AFC NFC Championship game. Who you got making the Super Bowl and who you got winning it.
My AFC Championship game, I'm going with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'll say the Pittsburgh Steelers, a rematch of the divisional round of last year. I'm going to go with the Jaguars and what would be described as an upset, and they're going to go to the Super Bowl to represent the AFC. On the NFC side, I have the Saints and the Rams, and I think the Rams are going to win. I think they're far too talented to not make it that far and represent the NFC. And then in the Super Bowl, I'm going to go with the LA Rams, and already their third season in Los Angeles, they're bringing a Super Bowl championship to Hollywood.
I like it. For me, in the AFC, I have, in the AFC Championship game, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Kansas City Chiefs. In the NFC Championship game, I have the New Orleans Saints and the St. Louis Rams. And for the Super Bowl, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the New Orleans Saints. And to me, I think the Saints are going to win that one and take home the Super Bowl this year.
Excellent. I think like we mentioned in the NFC South preview, Drew Brees' window is running short, but I think the Saints are way too talented to not even be one of the top contenders for the Super Bowl. And if they won it, I wouldn't be shocked.
All right. I think you and I have done a hell of a job this week of pumping out so much audio to prepare for this NFL season. I can't imagine that we forgot anything. Did we forget anything?
We did. You did not. We did not make our season prediction for the Browns.
I guess I kind of started to do it a little bit earlier. All right. Give me your final record for the Browns this season.
I'm going to go 6-10. I think that they're obviously going in the right direction. I honestly think they could win a couple more games in 6-10, but I have a bad head coach in my opinion, and I think he's going to hold this team back somewhat. So I'm going with 6-10. I think at the max they could win 8 or 9 games, and at the lowest, I think 3 or 4 wins would be their lowest. I think this team's far too talented to win 1 or 2 games. Of course, injuries could always get in the way, but I'm going to go with 6-10. How about you?
Well, to me, 6-10 is the floor for the Browns. The ceiling to me is 9-7, but I'm going to say they end up going 7-9 the season. I think they're going to win 7 games. I think that'll be enough to save Hugh's job going into next season. If we win 7 games this year, this town's going to be buzzing, and I think you're going to be looking at a situation going into next season that people are going to be talking about the playoffs a lot, and they rightfully should. If they're able to improve, well, I guess when you go winless, you can only improve unless you go winless 2 years in a row. But going 7-9, I think is really feasible, and ultimately, like I said, I think that saves Hugh his job. Unfortunately, I don't think he's the right coach for the Browns, but if he gets 7 wins, I think we're all going to be excited, and I guess at that point it'll be let's trust him, see if he can build upon it and make the playoffs the following year.
Yeah, absolutely. If they win 7 games, he'll probably be back. But like you said, I don't think he's the right coach for this team. I think they could do better, and unfortunately, when they win 6 games, they'll probably make that coaching change and find the next guy to hopefully get the Browns back into contention.
Okay. Now, I didn't forget anything. We are officially done, right?
We are done, man.
Okay. Thank God. It's been a long week. We've done a lot, and I'm really excited for all you guys to listen to this content. The NFL season's here. It's kicked off. The Falcons and the Eagles are playing right now. I don't have it on, so you can tell me the score. But I'm excited football is back, and it's going to be a nice, fun season. I think for the Browns. I think it's not going to be as miserable as years past. And we're going to be talking about quite a few wins this season on this podcast. As we get on out of here, go ahead and plug everything you need to plug.
Yes, as always, follow me on Twitter at jmccurrycle. Check out my site, thenorthcoastsports.com, for all the latest in Cleveland sports. We'll have a ton of stuff this weekend, talking Browns and Ohio State football, and go check that out. And also, got a little announcement on here to make tonight. Following Browns games on Sundays, I'm going to make an attempt this Sunday and also Saturday following the Ohio State game. We're going to do a live post-game show on my YouTube channel. I'll post all the links and everything on my Twitter or Facebook. But my plan is to do a post-game show, hopefully with Anthony. I understand his work schedule might not allow it all the time, but I'm going to do this post-game show, live stream it on YouTube. It'll be all over social media. And I want you guys involved to come on in, leave your feedback on the Browns games, and I'm going to hope to get some guests on there as well. We're going to try something and see how it works out. So look forward to that Sundays following Browns games.
I might join you Sunday. I might not, depending on if I have to take Noah's Ark to get home. And I might be able to join you in time for your live broadcast on Sunday. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Joki JKI. You can find the podcast on Twitter and on Facebook at 1085 Gridiron. Please subscribe, rate, review our podcast, on which you can find it on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and most importantly, Spotify. We just got on Spotify. We're going to be on iHeartRadio soon, and most importantly, the new Browns football season is here, and I leave you with these 2 words at the end of every podcast, and they couldn't be more important than heading into this game this Sunday, and that is, go Browns.